Welcome to the Picasso Museum and to our exhibition Picasso and the Artist's Jewelry. This is probably the first exhibition devoted to examining the relationship of the artist with this art, with this craft. We all know that Picasso played a significant role in exploring most of the different techniques that art has to offer, from painting to sculpture, to the objet trouvé, to drawing. Picasso was as prolific as he was curious, and with jewelry it could not be the less. His jewelry production is very little known because he always created it for his private environment, for his closest ones. So if we can broadly say that jewelry is meant as an amulet, is meant as a symbol of social status, and is meant as an embellishment for the body, Picasso was truly keen on this amulet meaning of the artwork, of the jewelry, and that's what he explored at length. I'm going to start with these pebbles here. If you take a close look at them, you'll see that these are engraved beach pebbles. There's a lot of playfulness in this artwork, in this jewelry. These are pebbles that Picasso would find on his summers by the beach in the south of France. And he would decorate them, engrave them, and then either throw them back on the sea or just give them away to his loved ones. In this instance, he was living, at the time he was living with photographer and artist Dora Maar. And I would like to show you some of the pictures that she took of these pebbles. In this wall here, we have a selection of photographs that Dora Maar took of Picasso's creations while they were living together. She systematically recorded most of Picasso's artworks during that era. And it's very telling to us that she recorded some of the very same pebbles that decorated pebbles that we are showing in that vitrine there. So we know that for both Picasso and Dora Maar, these were artistic creations per se. This relationship of playfulness and the found object comes to play here again in this necklace. This we can consider that is the work of two artists, Pablo Picasso, who decorated the central piece with an owl, and then the rest of the necklace, which was arranged by François Gillot, an artist per se. So some of the same elements that we found on those engraved pebbles are here again. Found objects on the beach, the relationship of a time of holiday, a time of relax, and the casualness of this jewelry that is not meant as an object of social status, but it's meant as an amulet, as a reference in this instance to some events of their private life, since they had just recently adopted a wounded owl they had found on their home. Picasso was never very interested in the social status that jewelry can provide to its wearers. And he very seldomly, very rarely, worked with silver or gold. We have some of the instances here in which he did. In this case, in the early 50s, he became acquainted with a dentist. It might seem like a strange route to start working in gold and silver jewelry through a dentist. But it just so happened that right after the Second World War, dentistry had an array of materials and techniques that allowed the artist to do some of the jewelry in ways that he had not been familiar with before. This work seemed to present kind of a contradiction. Along with the very fine, rich materials, we have jewelry that is not carefully crafted. The artist has been more interested in leaving his imprint in the artwork than doing a finely finished piece. A medium, though, that provided the artist with a mode of expression for his incursions into jewelry was definitely clay. In the 50s, ceramics became a mode of expression for the artist, and he became very involved with several ceramic artisans that lived in the south of France, nearby his home in La Californie. And with them, he started several experiments with this medium in which he was very innovative. In this vitrine here, what we have is the result of that interaction with ceramists. We have a first set of medallions that he produced using two colored clays, white and red, and he produced them by carving the motif on a piece of wood and then stamping it on the fresh clay. This set of medallions have a very endearing story about them. He kept them for many, many years. These were the first proofs of these wooden tampons. And many years later, he gave them to his wife, Jacqueline, in this basket as Easter eggs for Easter. So Jacqueline herself kept them for most of her life. And this is another of those instances in which we have the artist producing artwork, jewelry that is just devoted to his immediate, intimate circle. Some of the same medallions were later produced by the artisans, by the clay artisans themselves, the ceramists, like the Ramier family, with whom he had a very long-standing relationship of work and creative collaboration. And some other medallions were later created by the artist himself, like the ones we have in these vitrines here. What is the difference between these medallions and the ones we've seen in the previous showcase? Some of these medallions have the same motifs as the ones we've seen before. But in this instance, we know as a fact that the artist himself rolled the clay and stamped them and left them as unfinished as he really wanted them to be. The previous medallions we've seen were made by ceramists from the molds, from the tampons that the artist carved. But in this instance, it was the artist himself who produced them. For many people, having a clay medallion by Picasso was a gift they cherished. And in this case, these were the daughter and the widow of an artist friend of his, Manon. And they converted the medallions that Picasso gave them in clay into silver. They had them casted and converted both in silver, and some other people did the same in gold. This showcase here relates in a way with the showcase we've seen before with the gold and silver amulets and medallions. Here we have a faun. He did many of these fauns in white clay. He seemed to enjoy very much the act of modeling them. And each one of them was slightly different from the other. And on the other hand, we have again an object trouvé, a found object, a piece of clay that he found broken and decorated and turned into a large size medallion. As you well know, jewelry is a very complex art in which craftsmanship and artistic creation coincide. Picasso himself was not a jeweler. He was not knowledgeable of the fine methods of working with the materials. So he sometimes worked with professional jewelers. In this instance, we have the collaboration that he did with Pierre Hugo, a jeweler who crafted many of Picasso's designs in silver. And there are many instances in which we know that Picasso would send him drawings or designs for him to produce in gold and in silver. After this exploration of Picasso's relationship with jewelry, we would like to introduce you to the relationship that several other contemporary artists have had with this art, with this craft. We would like to start with this very telling showcase here. The artworks in this showcase are made by some of Picasso's friends from his Barcelona bohemian times that, along with him, moved to Paris at the beginning of the 20th century. So from a very early age, from a very early start of his career as an artist, Picasso was surrounded by people that considered jewelry making as an extension of their artwork. Here we have some works by Manolo Huguet, by Julio González, and by Pablo Gargallo, who were companions of Picasso in this adventure and discovery of Paris, the capital of the art world in the early 20th century. Rather than pretending to be an exhaustive examination of how contemporary artists relate to jewelry, this is a selection of pieces from a private collection. And we are lucky enough to have pieces as important for the evolution of jewelry as this bracelet by Meret Oppenheim. Meret Oppenheim used to be in the same surrealist circles in Paris as Picasso in the 1930s, and Picasso was very much impressed by this work, and the conversation that ensued led to some of Meret Oppenheim's most important artwork pieces, but it also led to a whole new role of jewelry in relationship to the human body, to the female body. Meret Oppenheim herself, by producing this bracelet, wanted to put into debate what was the meaning of embellishing a woman's body and what was the role of the female body in society. The showcase here also shows the work of artists that were very close to Picasso, that belonged to his circle of friends, and that worked with jewelry as well as many other art expressions. This is a selection of jewels made by Man Ray, one of these artists that was such close friends with Picasso. And this brooch in particular is modeled on the lips of Lee Miller, the famed photographer and model who was a very close friend of Picasso for more than 40 years. The exploration of jewelry by other contemporary artists has been a constant throughout the years. In the showcase here, we have some works by Louise Bourgeois, or some artworks based on Louise Bourgeois' work. And there's two issues that these pieces bring to the forefront. On one hand, for some artists, jewelry is a way of exploring their artwork in different at a different scale. For others, is the starting point for new discoveries and new languages, new creation languages. And then, on the other hand, as was also mentioned before, producing jewelry is a very specific craft. It needs of a special knowledge and skills. And so in this instance, we have the collaboration of an artist, Louise Bourgeois, with a jeweler, Chus Bures, who worked hand by hand with the artist into converting her artwork into wearable artwork, into wearable jewelry. A special mention should be made of Alexander Calder, by whom we have a really fine selection of pieces. Alexander Calder produced his own jewelry from very early on in his life, first for his sister's dolls when he was a child, and then later on in life he produced jewelry throughout most of his career. His pieces were 100% produced by him, so he would hammer, knot, tie, all the pieces together. He had a predilection for materials that were not regarded as noble, and for stones that he would find in the street, most noticeably here in this necklace that we have, this medallion. Very often, like he did in his artwork, he used wire to tie all the pieces together to build this jewelry. Next to the showcase, we have a sculpture of him also built in wire, in which we can see the relationship between his artwork and his jewelry creation. Alexander Calder's jewels were very famous during his lifetime, and they were very much wanted by people who were in the art world and in the fashion world. The interaction between jewelry and its wear comes into play in these pieces here. These pieces could be considered part of the kinetic movement, art movement, and they have movable pieces, movable parts that move when the body moves. So for the creator of these artworks, Pablo Picasso, the jewelry only becomes complete when it's worn, and its wear makes it move along with him or her. Nadine Samphal, the French performance artist, also addressed jewelry by its properties or by its meaning as an amulet. She is confronting status quos and taste standards of the time. She's presenting this really generous woman. She's presenting these colors that were termed as garish at the moment. So she is confronting the status quo to present amulets that will protect women from evil. On one hand, this reflects on her own personal experiences. She was sexually assaulted by her stepfather at a very young age. And on the other hand, she is reflecting on the impact that the visit to Barcelona and discovering the work by Gaudí had on her. Contemporary artists have been concerned with the limits of jewelry when approaching this art, this craft. In this instance, we have a ring by Silvia Medellis, And this ring has a small depot of explosive in the bottom, and then it has a lens. If sunlight gets through this lens, it might heat up the explosive and make it explode. Therefore, the artist is bringing jewelry to step further. It no longer embellishes the body, it can also cause potential damage to it. So it's questioning what is the role of jewelry in contemporary society. And to finish off our visit of the Picasso and the artist's jewelry, we will show you two brooches made by Janine Antony. This is a very intimate piece made by the artist, which are modeled right after her nipples, her own nipples. The piece is supposed to be worn by a woman, and it's the only example she made of them. This artwork became particularly significant many years later when the artist had breast cancer. So they turned to be the memory of her own body, which she can share with other women. Throughout our visit, you might have heard a sound in the background, and I wanted to introduce you to the source of it. We have made a little reflection on how jewelry is also present in mass communication, in mass media, and in popular culture. And we have selected a few scraps from films that show women, people, men donning on jewelry and the relationship with these pieces as a symbol of status, as a symbol of embellishment, as an object of desire. Although there are many other works in this magnificent collection that I would like to show you, this has been my selection for you tonight. I thank you very much for your attention. Hope you have enjoyed it, and invite you to come over to Barcelona, to come to the Picasso Museum and visit this exhibition, which will be on show until January 9th. Thank you very much, and thank you to New York Jewelry Week.